Hello everyone, Chief here, and tonight is going to be another episode of hacking with Hacker Happy Hour. Tonight we're going to be working with Electron, which is a wrapper for making desktop or cross-platform apps using HTML and JavaScript. If you're not familiar with it, basically it bundles V8 and Node with a Chrome shell and allows you to package that as an executable that you can then distribute to basically any type of environment you could install the Chrome browser to. I am going to start tonight with standing up a local Mattermost server so that we can use for testing. And what you're seeing here is just my start of that. I'm adding a Vagrant file to the project I cloned down from GitHub for the Mattermost project. Or sorry, the Matterfront project. And that project is here. So Matterfront is an application that creates a hostable client or a client that you can use, a desktop app that interfaces with your Mattermost backend. And Mattermost is basically a Slack clone. So Matterfront is essentially equivalent to the Slack desktop client. And the advantage of Matterfront and Mattermost over Slack is that it's open source, you have access to all the code, and it's self-hostable, so you can host it, say, behind a firewall. What I am going to be working on first tonight is a pull request for Matterfront. So right now, Matterfront is created using a makefile, and I'm going to port this to a more idiomatic solution based on the node universe that Electron lives in by using NPM. NPM will give us a lot of capabilities to do a lot of things for free that you wouldn't normally have to do when you're doing your makes. It'll also give us the ability to leverage other Electron universe packages like Electron Prebuilt and Electron Packager, so that we can automatically detect the hardware that you're developing on and skip the distribution specific setup stuff as a developer, and also allows us to specify what platforms we want to publish to and allow you to publish executables for those platforms from any machine by using Node as your development engine. So getting back to our code here, I am in the Matterfront directory, and I've created a Vagrant file. So basically I've run Vagrant init, and I'm not going to go too into detail here with Vagrant tonight, but basically Vagrant is a virtual machine manager. So what I'm going to do is stand up a virtual machine on my computer, and it will run a Docker image of Mattermost. So basically I'll be able to use a local IP address, which in this case is a local subnet, 192.168.33.33. And by hitting that address in my browser or remotely via some sort of any command line protocols or TCP protocol, be able to hit that IP as if it were a remote machine. So basically, we're emulating, like, say, a DigitalOcean server or an Amazon server. What I am going to finish doing right here is just plugging in the arguments that I want to pass to the Docker container for Mattermost itself. And the normal arguments that you would pass are name, according to the Mattermost docs, and we'll call this Mattermost dev, and a set of ports to expose. And you might also mount the volume. That's not in the documentation, but it does allow you to basically save a set of data so that you can rebuild the container over and over again, and it'll use that same set of data. That'll keep you from having to rebuild your login every time. I'll get to that point here in a minute, but first I want to just stand it up, do a Vagrant up, and make sure that everything's running with just the basic settings. And I'm also going to do create args. So I'm going to come over here and attempt to Vagrant up. You do not need that when we're using a Vagrant or a Docker provider with Vagrant. So I'll try to do this again. While this is booting, I am going to grab a drink. Entering Docker as the password, that won't work. Try Vagrant. Okay, so what I'm doing right now is basically just getting rid of the Docker provider for Vagrant. And I'm going to go with just a standard shell provider for right now. I haven't had good luck with the whole Docker provider, but I figured I'd give it a shot. Instead, I'll use a shell provisioner. So hmm. Let's do this. So right now we're just going to stand up a basic Ubuntu box. Okay, so now I will SSH into this box. And So I'm looking at the docs here for Docker, and it actually looks like the install instructions have changed for Ubuntu. It now supports Docker's apt repository. So now I'm going to add the GPG key, which you can find on docs.docker.com under install for Ubuntu install. And let's see, sources.list.docker.list. Okay. And I am running Ubuntu Trusty 64, so I'm going to add that repository. And I'm going to run an apt-get update, which should add in the Docker. Let's see here, the Docker repos packages. And which, let's see, Docker, see if it exists. Just to be safe. Okay. This is just making sure that it's pulling from the right Docker repo, which is correct here. So it's apt Docker project. And we should be able to do a apt-get install of Docker engine. So Docker is what we're going to run our container of Mattermost in. And I'm going to do Docker full Mattermost platform. I'm going to do dev. There's a dev tag. Now, ideally, and what I'll probably do if I get time tonight, is put all that information into the provisioning script of the Vagrant file itself, so that you don't have to manually do any of these things. If you were to get this project and want to follow along, you just merely git clone it and cd into the directory that it cloned into, and then type Vagrant up, and it would do all this for you. What you originally saw was me attempting to use what's called a provider. You see on line 46 here where I specify VirtualBox as the provider. The provider is basically the engine that runs your virtual machine, the hypervisor. The problem with the Docker provider is that if your host machine, which in my case is a Mac, doesn't natively support containers, which only Linux machines basically have the container technology required to run Docker containers at this time. Mac definitely doesn't. Windows 10 is dabbling with container support, but it's different than what Docker runs. It's not the LXC containers that the Linux kernel supports. So I am going to come back over to my VM here and just make sure that I have the Docker image, and I do. And now it's time to run this image. So I'm going to say Docker run. Let me give it a name of Mattermost dev, and run as a service and publish. This will expose anything that's exposed in the Docker container to the host architecture, which in this case is a Vagrant virtual machine. And I'm going to do some port mapping here. Docker docs, or the Mattermost documents, say to do port 8065 to port 80, which basically port 80 is inside your Docker container. It's like a little mini VM, and port 80 is what their service runs on. So the Mattermost website runs on that, and 8065 is a mapping to the layer, the guest layer outside of it. So basically you would then dial up whatever that host IP address is and hit port 8065, and you'd be able to, voila, see your container. Now I'm doing a little bit extra magic by looking at this private network. So I've created a private network, and I've created an IP on there. So 192.168.33.33. And this is a host-only IP address. And what I've set it to do is map port 80 to, on the host, to port 80 of the guest. So I should be able to. Now, I haven't actually ever tried this with 80 before because it's a privileged port, but I'm hoping that with a private network I can hit that IP. If not, I'll just switch it over to, like, say 8,000 or something, and we'll be good to go. And here again, I could create a volume that I could pass, which I think I'm going to do. Or we'll just say data. Oh, I forgot the image that I need to run here. Okay. So now I'm going to come over here and go to 192.168.33.33. And voila, we have our Mattermost instance stood up in just a few minutes. Pretty simple, pretty nifty. If you're looking to evaluate Mattermost, this is definitely a procedure that you could use to try it without having to install it to DigitalOcean or Amazon or something like that. I am going to, all right, and right now the base Docker container doesn't do email address validation, so I could put anything I want in here. And team name is, we'll say Hacker Happy Hour. And that URL is correct. We'll say chief. And I'm going to plug in a password and just call it test. That probably won't work. I'll just say password. And now we have our very own local Mattermost instance. Okay, so now we go on to Matterfront. And at the moment, I'm going to use my own instance of it. And something nifty about this is also, if I exit out of here, that machine is still running in the background. So I'm going to do a git status. I'll keep my editor open over here. And I'm going to edit the git ignore. So I still need to add the provisioner. So check my repository for that later. And I'm going to make a pull request back to the upstream project, which is LLOEKI Matterfront. Go to github.com/LLOEKI/Matterfront. That's the parent project for Matterfront. Okay. So I am going to check out a branch that I was working on earlier to actually stand up the Matterfront client. And check out Electron support. And just to prove I'm not nuts, you'll notice that my Mattermost instance is still running. So normally Mattermost would be accessed via a web client. What we're looking to do is create a launchable desktop client, and we're going to use this Matterfront to do that. So what I have been working on is, like I said, repackaging. Instead of using a makefile to build that local Electron NPM supported version of it. So my first steps were to actually add a package.json file, remove the makefile, and write a quick NPM script. You'll notice there's no makefile in here. I've added a bin folder, which has the makings, the beginning makings of a Matterfront CLI. So you'll be able to initialize Matterfront via CLI if you want to, or programmatically via another node module if you wish. I will go into the package.json here. And the dev dependencies that we have so far are pretty simple. It's Electron packager and Electron prebuilt. Get rid of the test script since we don't actually have it yet. And our build is this script here. So we use Electron packager to package the local directory. This should actually be source. And I come over here and run npm start. Oops, I need to do npm install first. So if you're new to npm and why we're switching to using Node and npm to build this instead of Make is npm has a lot of environmental utilities that allow us to run and build and code projects that are also built around the Node environment, which Electron very much is. If you look at line 15 in my package.json file here, you'll see that there's a bin directory and a Matterfront command line CLI file indicated. If you were to look at the Electron pre-built package, it would also have a bin object in its package.json file, only instead of it saying Matterfront, it would say Electron, and it would be the path to that executable. So Electron Packager, the win that we're getting out of this here is instead of having to manually go into your system and add a config file within some sort of directory that's based on what your architecture is, you can just use npm scripts to say npm start, and Electron pre-built will automatically launch based on your host architecture that it detects. And I need to npm link. I know what happened here. I was in the middle of a commit earlier and I never finished it. So I need to edit source main. So I deleted a bunch of code that line 25 and line 28, I deleted a bunch of configuration code, and this matterfront.source variable that you see inside the encode URI component is actually not being passed in yet. And that is the start of what we're going to build tonight. Let's add the old code back in real quick here. There we go. Okay, so this is the first thing that's telling us that we're doing everything right, believe it or not. So this is actually launching Electron and the Matterfront application into it. If we look at our code here, it'll tell us that it's looking for a config.json file. And if it doesn't find it, then it's going to open this no config file or no config.html file. And where is it? There we go, no source.html. And so here's what we have. And this wants us to put in a config.json file and put in our URL. So we'll go ahead and do that. Start that up again. And here we go. And there we go. So now we have our first desktop instance of a Matterfront server. And just to show you, again, that I'm not crazy, I'll type in something here. And you see it pop up there. Okay, so basically we want to turn this into something that we can build and distribute. So we've got it working via the config files as is. So this is code that I can actually commit now. And thought that my git ignore had npm debugs in it. Okay, for now I am just okay. Before I officially submit this pull request, I want to finish the Vagrant provisioning stuff. Actually, for now, this is fine. I'll submit that in another pull request. Um, Now, for this pull request, that is also going to get removed. Okay, and that will conclude this pull request. So I am now going to merge this into my own master. Okay, and that will conclude tonight's session. Look for some links in the video as I publish it or publish this recording in the next night or two. And those links will be to the various repositories for Mattermost, Matterfront, and my own work. And be sure to check back for any updates to this PR, which would include updates to the Vagrant file for automatic provisioning of a test Mattermost service. Join me next time as I work on more Mattermost pull requests, and soon we'll be tackling a Ember.js project as well as a rx.js project. Thanks for joining.